So good evening, guys. We'll start now. Okay, so we'll take a quick recap. So what we've done yesterday, we'll just see. This is a session on budget 21-22. So we started with why budget is so important as a current event in all sort of examinations. In all the phases of those examinations, starting from phase one, you may call it phase one, phase two, or prelims, mains, whatever. So then we just went to see what are the challenges before the country and the finance minister before she could, formulate this budget. Then we saw six important pillars which she has given so much of emphasis in this budget. Okay, and some key highlights like first paperless budget and such stuff. So just next 5 minutes, just to get into that link, we'll quickly revise it what we have seen. We started with for any Indian economy related discussion, we should always start with GDP, gross domestic product, and then expenditure approach. We saw what is GDP using expenditure approach is like consumption plus government expenditure plus private investment and net of exports. So if you are a finance minister, you need to work on these four areas. You need to grow them. You need to enhance the demand in the economy. You need to spend judiciously to create, as a government, to create capital assets. Then you should promote the private investors or businessmen to, invest in India and into the businesses, expand their businesses so that economy can grow. And of course, net of export. So as a country and as a finance minister, in order to grow your GDP, you should always try to increase your export and minimize your import or control them. Okay, so that is what we've seen. What were the challenges? As I said, this definition itself gives everything. The consumption was a challenge due to COVID, pandemic, and pandemic-induced stretched lockdowns. Economy was totally shut down. Never before we've seen such, lockdowns in any part of the world. So demand was a problem. So reviving demand, increasing the consumption, sustained recovery in the jobs. People lost, jobs. They did not have disposable income that reduced the overall demand. So sustained recovery in the jobs as well as creating decent jobs. We've seen our most of the jobs are like gig workers, contractual workers who do not have their appointment letters. So such jobs are being created, but we need some decent jobs to be created. So that was a challenge before her. Then we saw the third part is the investment, right? So investment for the private investors to invest or businessmen to invest. What was important was the credit supply to them, but banks were under stressed, stressed asset problem or stressed loan problem, bad loans, toxic loans, what you call them. So in order to encourage them or reform, do some reform so that banks, would give more loans to infrastructure projects, and not just banks, but financial institutions, other the corporate bond market or the capital market, government bond market, to reform these markets and reform the insurance sector. That was a challenge. Then the fourth was government spending. We knew that economy was shut down, GST collections were very down, revenue was not there. So where would government spend from? They also had to manage the balance between spending as well as this fiscal prudence. So she had that challenge also, because 9.5% of the fiscal deficit she achieved. When FRBM Act asked you to keep it below 3. Okay, so that was a challenge she had. Then this investment target also she could not achieve. So make it more effective and efficient disinvestment process. So they have come up with this asset monetization. So these were the challenges. Then we went to see 6 pillars: health and well-being, physical, financial, capital, infrastructure, then inclusive development for aspirational India, reinvigorating human capital, innovation, R&D, minimum government, maximum government. I'll just actually share the screen with you so that we can just have a, we can correlate the things in a better way. I'll just share it with you. Yeah. So that is what we have seen. Challenges, 6 pillars, highlights of the budget. It was a paperless budget, spending of 2.23 lakhs of crores on healthcare, 3-time contraction before, just 3 times we had a contraction in GDP before any budget. We saw that. We saw some other highlights also. Then we went to see first 2 pillars, health and well-being. As I said, in the health, you need to concentrate on health infrastructure, nutrition, water supply, and clean air. So in health infrastructure, we had, they had introduced this PM Atmanirbhar Swasthya Bharat Yojana, and what they are going to do it in it. Then we had a Mission Poshan 2.0, then Jal Jeevan Mission for urban. The Mission Poshan is for nutrition. Swasthya Bharat Yojana is a comprehensive, scheme for developing your primary, secondary, tertiary healthcare sector. Jal Jeevan as a third portion was water supply. So Jal Jeevan Mission Urban was the scheme that they have introduced. Then they have come up with Urban Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0. Then for the clean air, they have come up with voluntary scrapping policy. So we saw the advantages of a scrapping policy with respect to pollution reduction, then encouraging the automotive sales, then encouraging the new introduction of new technologies, and of course fuel efficiency, reducing the import bill. Okay, so then we came to the second pillar. It was physical, financial capital, and infrastructure. Okay, in that we had this Atmanirbhar Bharat PLI scheme. For the textile, we've seen Mitra mega investment textile parks to be established 7 textile parks in the next 3 years. They also have they wanted to encourage this textile industry. Okay, so what they have done, as I said, net export, and so export minus import is a net export. So they have tried to put some custom duty on cotton and some increase the duty on raw silk and silk yarn. Okay, so when it comes to capital and infrastructure, the first scheme was Atmanirbhar Bharat, then textile. Then we had infrastructure. In that, national investment pipeline was announced. We saw that. Then whenever comes infrastructure, there has to be finances. So we have seen development financial institution, which is to be created. Then, as I said, government needs to spend. Even economic survey this year, they have told that government needs to spend more and more for India to grow. So how are they going to spend? So they are going to monetize their assets. And that is what they have done. Whatever assets they have, say pipelines, operational toll roads, airports, sports stadium, warehousing, belonging to them, they're going to monetize them and unlock the value. Then we saw under infrastructure, we have seen increased, highest ever capital of 1.08 lakh crores to road transport and highway. She has given some numbers about their achievements. Infrastructure mein roads, highways, after roads, highway, railway. After railway, we have seen urban infrastructure. In that, we have seen metro and the city buses. Then their safety, security, convenience. We have seen power infra, ports, shipping, waterways. Then we've seen petroleum, natural gas. Then after physical infrastructure, we have seen financial capital. Even economic survey highlighted that India, regulates economy so excessively. So whenever something comes in the economic survey, it's in the soft language, it is a indication or advice to the government to follow things. So whenever you see budget, you will always have something said in the economic survey, and which is being followed in the budget. So economic advisor would say something, would point out something, some of the areas to be developed, just the way we saw yesterday. So survey said government spending on healthcare should be increased from currently 1.5% to 2.5 to 3%. So they have spent more on healthcare. So similarly, they have said the excess regulation should be reduced. So we have seen the single securities market code that they are trying to introduce to streamline the regulatory framework and increase the ease of doing business. Then we saw insurance, the foreign flows, that FDIs from increased from 49 to 74% that they have allowed, so as to get more employment generation for customers. Insurance products will be cheaper and better products. Then solvency at the time of such pandemic time, go insurance companies should have sufficient funds for their solvency. And of course, divestment is what the government is planning to get the funds from. Okay, so 1.75 lakhs crores of investment, disinvestment target they have seen. IPO of LIC, privatization of 2 PSBs and 1 general insurance company. Then other disinvestments which were actually announced and could not be completed due to Corona, they're going to complete it. And now we'll see the third pillar. So this is inclusive development for aspirational India, right? So in that, the first point and the first importance what they are giving is to agriculture, right? So we'll just see some of the numbers here on the left hand side. If you could see, this is in the economic survey. The share of agriculture and allied activities in the GVA, gross value added, is how much? 18.7%, right? I just mistakenly put it as 187. So 18.7%, 2019-20, as per provisional estimates of national income by CSO. Okay, so now this is going down. Now, if you are a farmer, so and you're doing you're farming, what are the problems that you see? So whenever question comes to you regarding Indian agriculture in men's or even in the interviews, you see. So I'm an Indian farmer. I'll list down few of my problems. So first of all, the per capita land is very less. So I have in the beginning only I have less land. Okay, I don't have money. I don't have credit, easily available credit. Okay, second is the credit. Third, the climate is against me. Sudden rains, droughts, nisarga like calamities happening. Then even after crossing those hurdles, I am producing something. I am not sure whether I'll get the sufficient rates for my produce. So there comes MSP. Okay, then I have produced something which is called which is perishable. So I have to sell it at whatever rate the brokers or the APMC ask. So because APMC infrastructure is not there, cold storage is not there, so I cannot keep those produced for a long time. So I have to sell it. That is a distress sale. So these are the problems. So whenever there is a question, so the first of all, per capita land holding, credit, then comes the climate or the environment, then comes the MSP prices, then comes the infrastructure. So these are the things which are addressed in this year's budget. So credit, they're saying we are increasing the credit to agriculture and allied activities to 16.5 lakh crore. So in that, they are including agriculture, dairy, fishery. Okay. Again, for the agriculture credit, RIDF fund, that is managed by NABARD, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund. They have increased from 30 crore to 40 crore. Again, one more fund for micro irrigation, again managed by NABARD. They have doubled it from 5,000 crores to 10,000 crores. Okay. As I said, third is the perishable items, and I have no scope to store it and sell it. So there they introduced one scheme called as the Operation Green Scheme. It was initially limited to three crops, that is tomato, onions, and potatoes. These are perishable crops, and they had introduced this Operation Green Scheme. On the left hand side, you will see this. Why? Because see, there are two problems. Government has to manage both farmers as well as consumers. When it comes to perishable, farmers were not able to store them. They could not, add value into those products, and because these are perishable, there were certain events in which consumers were not able to get those items, and the prices were increasing like anything. So when you see simple example of say onion, you will get it 5 rupees per kg to 100 rupees per kg. So this variation and the availability and the price fluctuation. So in order to address these issues, so value addition, availability, and price fluctuation, they have introduced this Operation Green Scheme. Okay, and they have now extended it to 22 perishable products. As I said, credit was a problem, and infrastructure was a problem. So what they have done is Agriculture Infrastructure Fund to be made available to APMCs. So what it has the component of interest subvention and financial support. Initially, it was not available to APMCs. Now it has been made available to APMCs. And of course, technology. Indian agriculture, I mean, hardly they use any techniques for in any area, not just farmers, but the mandis and whatever. So Enam, this platform, they've already added 1,000 mandis. Now another 1,000 mandis they are going to integrate it. And again, as I said, as a farmer, I was not sure about things, the price that I'm going to get for my crop. So they're saying MSP at minimum of 1.5 times cost of production across all commodities. So that is what they have tried to achieve in this pillar, agriculture. Now fisheries, they're saying development of modern fishing harbors. So they are going to start 5 hubs: Kochi, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, Paradip, and Petughat. Okay. There would be one more thing, that is multi-purpose seaweed park in Tamil Nadu, that is that they're going to start. And this would be helpful for coastal communities. And the seaweed can be used as, in various chemicals, fertilizer, food product industry, and pharma industry. So that is what they have tried to give it in this budget. Again, for migrant workers, you've seen the kind of pain they have to go in this pandemic. Migrant workers and government also could not do much because they didn't have data about people, data about migrant workers. Neither the local governments, nor the state governments, nor the central governments, the data, the comprehensive data of migrant workers were not available, and that caused lot of pain for the policy makers and the policy implementers. So under this inclusive development, they have concentrated on these migrant workers and laborers. They're going to launch a portal to collect the information on gig, building, platform, and construction workers. So if they have the data, comprehensive data about these people, so how would it be useful for the policymakers to formulate the social security welfare schemes like health, housing, skill, insurance, credit, food for migrant workers? Okay, so that is what they have understood from the past mistakes. Okay, again, when you saw this, when you see this migrant workers and laborers and their family stayed somewhere in one part of the country, they migrated to the other part of the country. So not the whole family migrates. Okay, so one person migrates to other part, and he can't use his ration card because there's only one ration card and cannot be partially rationed. So under one nation, one ration card scheme, you have availability of ration everywhere in all the states. If you're from Bihar and you're working in somewhere in Kerala, so you will get a partial ration on that card, and your family would get the rest of the ration in your home state. Within the state is also possible here. Okay, so this is already under implementation. One nation and one ration card, 69 crore beneficiaries, 86% of coverage. Okay, 32 states they have covered, 86% of coverage of beneficiaries, and now they're going to concentrate on 4 remaining states. Okay. Again, economic survey highlighted things about simplification of all labor codes and make it into 4 labor codes. So what will happen? This over regulation is what we've seen would reduce, and what they are planning, government planning to do is to give all workers minimum wages coverage by ESIC, so that their health needs can also be addressed, because health expenditure is very damaging on their lives, because whatever they earn, and they don't have insurance, so all of their saving goes into it. They may have to go to the landowners, or to get the loan. And night shift for women with adequate protection. And it's not about just workers. So if we are going to give facilities to workers, that will be a burden on employers. So they have also tried to address their burdens with single registration, licensing, and online returns. So this was for migrant workers and laborers. Now, generally, what kind of questions you get in interview or mains? So when I attended one of my MPSC interviews, they asked me about inclusive. What is the difference between inclusive development and financial inclusion? So you should know it thoroughly. What are these concepts? And you should try to find out what is inclusive development, what is financial inclusion, what is bigger, what is a sub part of it. So such questions, and with these figures, you can actually explain to the interviewer in a better and logical way. So the next point is financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is what? Whatever sectors you have, whatever strata of the people, from all sorts of castes, religion, from all gender, from rural or urban, from Bimaru states, or from even the developed states. You need to take everybody on financial platform. You need to include them into the financial system, so that they can access all these financial products like bank, insurance, mutual funds, and everything. So once they have the banking account to start with, they can explore the other financial products. So what they're trying to do it here in this budget is to for the Stand Up India program, they're for the SCSTs and women, they are going to reduce this margin money requirement from 25% to 15%. Okay. And MSME to get some 15,700 crore rupees. So financial inclusion is micro, small, and medium enterprises are very important, because for them, availability of loan is always a problem. Okay. Now we'll go to the next step, that is the education. The human capital. When it comes to human capital, you always get this thing. First is education. Okay. So economic survey says literacy level of 96% at elementary school level, which is a good thing that they have pointed out. But the problem is this was elementary school level, but when it comes to overall, age 7 and above, the literacy rate is 77.7%. This is improved, but the thing is, the difference between social and religious groups and gender still persists. So now this economic survey finding, they're trying to do something on this finding. So what they are going to do, finance minister has said that national education policy, the new education policy, has received good comments from all strata of the society. As I said, the difference between religious and social groups and gender. So what they're trying to do is 100 new Sainik school, partnership with NGOs, private schools, and states. There would be a this is what called, as I said, religious, social, okay, and probably the certain parts of the country where you don't have any higher education level institutions or universities. So they're trying to set up a central university in Leh for higher education. Ekalavya model residential schools, another 750 schools, and for that they have increase the cost from 20 crore to 80 crore and 48 crore in hilly areas. There would be post-matric scholarship scheme for welfare of SCs, and they are going to revamping it. These are just facts. You need to go through it twice or thrice so that you get to know about them. And as I said, even this was pointed somewhere. So India needs a Higher Education Commission of India. Okay, so they are going to come up with this Higher Education Commission with 4 separate vehicles for standard setting, accreditation, regulation, and funding. This is very important when it comes to policy. So education that we have covered. Now the skilling. Skilling may one more some of the findings what government or the survey is giving is only 2.4% of India's workforce in 15 to 59 years have received formal vocational training. Okay, just 2.4% workforce has received formal vocational training. You look at the numbers, and they're saying 8.9% informal sources like heredity or maybe on-job training, or they just learn like that. So that is 8.9%, but 2.4% is the overall percentage. Okay, and that's why they're trying to do something with respect to skilling in the budget. So as we have seen, they're not just in India, but they're trying to do partnership with countries like UAE and Japan. So why with the UAE? Because many of our skilled laborers, they go there and they get a job there, but the skill qualification, assessment, and certification, there are so many variations into that. So they're going to do the partnership with UAE so to benchmark the skill qualification, assessment, and certification, so that our people can go there with these qualifications, get a job easily there. Okay, again, when it comes to Japan, they are very good in industrial and vocational skills. So we are partnering with them to having a collaborative training inter-training program, so that we could get the knowledge or facilitate the transfer of Japanese industrial and vocational skills, techniques, and knowledge. Okay, Apprenticeship Act also they are trying to amend to enhance the opportunities for the youth. In that, they are going to do introduce post-education apprenticeship and training for the graduates and engineering diploma holders. Okay, and realignment of existing national apprenticeship training scheme. So this is what they are trying to do in skilling. Now it comes to innovation and R&D. So on the left hand side, if you see what economic survey says, relying on jugaad innovation risks missing the crucial opportunity to innovate our way into the future. So government or economic survey wants not just to rely on jugaad, but you have to, as in country, you have to invest on R&D, and you have to keep on doing innovation so that you do not miss your opportunity. We always boost off this jugaad, but this is not going to help in the long term. That is what economic survey is trying to advise to the finance minister. So again, what they're saying, private sector need to get into the speed and spend more on R&D. GDP on R&D is GDP spend on R&D is lowest among top 10 economies. What economic survey had to say. So we are spending when it comes to top 10 economies, we are the lowest spender when it comes to R&D. So on the left hand side, whatever you are saying, you're seeing, right? These can be used in your mains examination, in your GS studies, or in your essay writing, and again in answering those interview questions. So story everybody knows कि गवर्नमेंट का स्पेंडिंग R&D पे बहुत कम है. ओके, आर स्किलिंग बहुत कम है, अपन ये चीजें बहुत कम करते हैं. So this is not going to work in your examination. What is going to work is the exact figures, or at least approximate figures with the sources like economic survey, CSO data, such things. So in innovation and R&D, when it comes to innovation and R&D, economic survey has also told that we are doing good when it comes to space technology. They have given some budget has given something which is called as a Gaganyaan mission for 4 Indian astronauts being trained They are being trained actually. Finance Minister has informed in the budget speech. They are planning to introduce or to send first unmanned mission in December 2021. One more, you know, survey that they are going to do is Deep Ocean Mission Survey, exploration and conservation of deep sea biodiversity. So innovation and R&D, what is important is these figures. And as I said, National Research Foundation outlay of 50,000 crore over next 5 years, what they're trying to give. So government should also spend, not just the private sector. So Finance Minister has given 50,000 crore over next 5 years. What it would do, National Research Foundation, is to strengthen the ecosystem, overall research ecosystem, and research should be on identified national priority thrust areas. Okay, so these are the keywords which you should always try to use in your exams, uh, written examination, or even during the interview questions. So national priority thrust areas, strengthen the research ecosystem, something like that. Okay, and one more program they're trying to do is National Language Transmission Mission. So it's like you have a very good nutrition scheme somewhere in Chhattisgarh, or somewhere in Kerala. Education scheme is very good, and whatever it's finding, whatever the project and whatever were the rules, regulations, their execution, that is available in the local language. So what government is trying to do through this mission is to make it available, the data of different schemes of different states or districts in all major Indian languages, so that the interstate use of such policy programs can be enhanced. It will be beneficial for everything. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is what they say, right? So that is it. And one more fact of New Space India Limited. So that is it. Now, in minimum, this is a 6-pillar: minimum government, maximum governance. Even during this October speech to new IS probationers, PM also emphasized on, concentrating on minimum government and maximum governance. So this is important pillar for this government, and they're actually trying to do the things here. So again, few facts of reforms in tribunal to ensure speedy justice. They're saying this, the coming census for the 2021 to 2030 would be a first digital census, and this is just a fact. So 3768 crores of rupees they have actually allocated to the first digital census of this century. And then we have National Commission for Allied Healthcare Professionals and National Nursing and Midwifery Commission Bill. So why this National Commission and National Commissions are coming? So that you have a transparent and efficient regulation. Government doesn't want to get into the excessive regulation. They want to make it very simplify and streamlined. So that is why these two commissions for healthcare professionals and nursing and midwifery. Okay. And again, conciliation mechanism for quick resolution of contractual disputes with CPSE. So government doesn't want to, do more of government, but more of governance. So they want to do more sort of, guidance role instead of doing the actual government. Okay, these are some more facts about 15 crore to promote digital mode of payments. You may expect now, since this is a Diamond Jubilee celebration for Goa liberation, so they have given some money to this program also. So this can, anything related to Goa's liberation from Portuguese question may be expected. You have this 1,000 crores given to welfare of tea workers for Assam and West Bengal. And again, contingency fund, because of this COVID thing, they must have understood something needs to be increased. 500 crores was very meager, so they have increased it to 30,000 crore. Okay, now, one second. Till now, we have covered 6 pillars. Now, very important thing, that is, see, budget is not just about the schemes and policies, but it is about your the country's fiscal position also. So we're going to see this financial or fiscal position of the country. So this whole diagram, okay, whatever this this PPT on this slide will give you answers to almost all the questions of when it comes to fiscal position of the country. Okay, so concentrate on this. I have copied it from Mrunal Patel's website. So just want to make it very, very easy for you, because this fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, effective revenue deficit, primary deficit, you always get confused with it, and it's very difficult to remember stuff. Okay, so you should have overall view of India's as a country and its fiscal position. So I will just try to help you to understand so that you don't forget it easily. Now I'll just you just need to remember certain figures, 7 to 8 figures, and then rest of the things you can easily calculate, so that you don't have to mug up the things. Don't have to be concerned about these numbers, these ratios and figures. So I'll just show you one figure is for the next financial year. They are projecting the GDP to 222 lakh crores. So this is very important figure and easy to remember. 222 lakh crore ka GDP hoga projected. Okay, now how would it come? So we are going to see our fiscal position. There are two sides, revenue side and capital side. You know it. The capital is the capital expenditure. Revenue is like the day-to-day activities and whatnot. So under revenue, you have revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Now, when it comes to budget and to the government, there needs to have some revenue receipts to spend on it, right? So where are the receipts, revenue receipts coming from? On the left hand side, as you can see, revenue receipts from the direct taxes and from indirect taxes. So direct taxes are like corporation tax, income tax, MAT, etc. And indirect tax is GST, excise, and customs. Okay, so from the direct taxes and indirect taxes, basically from the tax receipts, how much we are going to get? 15 lakh crores. Okay, so that is what India is going to get in the next financial year. Okay, and the non-tax revenues, what it does, government does some selling of the goods and services like railway services or the postal services. So whatever money they get it, again, government is the owner, majority of owner in many of the companies like ONGC, you have RBI, SBI, Steel Authority of India. So many companies are owned by them. Whenever they earn some profit, these companies give dividend, and as a stakeholder, government gets that money. Then you have interest received from the states on whatever loans central government has given to them, and grants received from international institutions. So this is non-tax revenue. Tax revenue, you have corporation, income tax, and other direct taxes, and GST, excise, and custom. So just remember these two figures. So tax revenue is 15 lakh crore and non-tax revenues 2 lakh crore. So it's I think it is 1.5 to 1.5 to 2 crores, 2 lakh crores. So this is coming total. The total is coming to 17 lakh of crore. Okay, so you just understand this figure and try to remember this figure as 17 lakh crore, 15 plus 2, tax and non-tax. Right now, what is our revenue expenditure? Okay, so revenue expenditure is what are the components in it? As it is, when you see here, revenue expenditure is what interest paid on the loan. So whatever loans we give, the central government has taken, they have to pay the interest on this. So that is their revenue expenditure, because it is not adding any value to your capital, assets. So that is considered as revenue expenditure. Then the grants which you need to give as per the Finance Commission to the states. Okay, so this is also expenditure for the central government. We are talking about union budget, right? So this is with respect to the union government. Okay, so interest, that whatever loans they have taken, whatever grants they have to give as per the Finance Commission's recommendations, the many subsidies like LPG, fertilizer, these subsidies also they have to spend. On the defense they have to spend, and on the salaries and the pensions of central government employees. Okay, so these are the revenue expenditure. Now, if you see, the number is 29 lakh crore. So you understand this. First of all, revenue receipts are 17 lakh crores and revenue expenditure is 29 lakh crore, right? So we'll just go ahead and just see revenue side. Now the revenue side is very clear. We have seen this 220 lakh. Now these three figures you have to remember this time. 220 lakh crore of projected GDP. We have said 17 lakh crore of revenue receipts, 29 lakh crore of revenue expenditure. So what will be the revenue deficit? It will be 29 minus 17. So it is coming around, the figures are these are approximate figures. So it is coming around 11 to 12 lakh crore, which is, if you calculate it, this is 5.1% of the GDP. Okay. Effective revenue deficit is revenue deficit minus grants for the capital assets by finance commission. Okay. So if you see here, we'll just try to see, simplify it. Okay. So हमने क्या देखा है, revenue receipts, right? So यहाँ पे revenue deficit बहुत ज्यादा दिख रहा है, 11 to 12 lakh crore दिख रहा है. But इसमें government has done some good work in the sense for they have given some loans or grants to states for creating capital assets, right, as per the finance commission's recommendation. So we're going to reduce that so that it will be a effective revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit मतलब हमें अभी ये जो number दिख रहा है 11 to 12 lakh crore, is a big number, out of which we have given some grants for capital asset creation. So that we are going to reduce so that this RD, that is revenue deficit number, will become effective. So as we have said, so this is the 2 lakhs crores of grants given. We are just subtracting from the overall revenue deficit. So it is coming out to be 11 minus 2 lakh crores, 9 lakh crore. That will be a 4.1% of GDP, right? So these, if you remember three figures, 222, 17 and 29, okay, you will get most of the questions on revenue deficit. Okay. And if you count the effective revenue deficit, you just have to know this grants for the capital asset. These are coming to be 2 lakh crores. Okay. So this is on the revenue side of the government's budget. Okay. Now we'll see the capital side. Okay. Capital side means there are two sides, receipts and expenditure. So this is what government, now here so many questions can come and so many ratios can be asked in MPSC mains or MPSC pre, RBI grade B examination. So if you concentrate on these numbers, so difficult questions can be addressed here. So as I said, in the capital side, receipts, the debt receipts. Now debt receipts of government. So government क्या करता है? Government internally बहुत सारे loan लेते हैं. Okay. Why do they take the loan? Because they don't have enough revenues, right? So it's just 17 lakh crores of revenue they have got. Now they are borrowing, or they are the debt receipts are 15 lakh crores, and this is around 1.75 to 2 lakh crores of non-debt receipts. Non-debt receipts are like, government gives the loan to the states. So whatever loan, the principal they receive from the states, that is being covered, collected here as a capital receipt. You see here, this loan recovered, the principal recovered, and whatever interest that is received from the state, it comes under revenue receipts. Okay. And the loans given to the states and we have recovered it, that comes under capital receipts. So you need to understand this. There are multiple, MCQs can come here saying that interest received from the state would be under which, which label. Is it the revenue receipt or the capital receipt? Okay. So you should know that interest that is received would be a revenue receipt, and the loan principal that is received would be a capital receipt. Okay. And disinvestment is what government is selling their own stakes, their own ownership, and getting the money. So that is called as a capital receipt. And in the expenditure, as I said, expenditures are the loan given to the states. Okay. That will be the for creating the capital assets and creation of the capital goods and assets. That will be a capital expenditure. We have seen 5.5 crores of capital expenditure is what she is targeting. That is the highest one. I think some higher percentage that is she has allocated, she is saying. Okay. So now we have gone through these numbers. So 17 lakh crore, 29 lakh crore, 17 lakh crore. Okay. Before that, we'll just go into the capital side just to see what we have. So as I said, capital receipts are the debt receipts and non-debt receipts. Okay, so debt receipts are like they do it from internal market. They borrow, government borrow from RBI from whatever saving we do. Okay, small saving schemes, the postal saving schemes or PPF, whatever money they get it, they borrow it from there, and it is 15 lakh crore. Okay, and then you have debt receipts from the external. This was internal, and external से भी हम कुछ loans लेते हैं. That is not much. That is 1500 crores. Okay, so if you calculate 15 lakh crore, 15 to 15.15 lakh crore, it is going to come 6.8%. So that is actually the fiscal deficit. So we'll see that. And as I said, capital receipts may you have debt receipts and we have non-debt receipts. Okay, so debt receipts may we have seen कि internal market से, RBI से, small saving scheme से जो पैसा आता है, और non-debt receipts से यहाँ पे if you see it is from foreign sources. Now non-debt से देखेंगे हम लोगों ने disinvestment and loans recovered. So again I have written here principal recovered. Okay, principal recovered will come under capital receipts, and interest received will come under revenue receipts. So you need to remember this. There's something which is confusing. And disinvestment. So disinvestments, the total comes to be 2 lakh crores. And the capital expenditure, as I said, they are planning to spend 5.5. It is written 5 lakh crores, but 5.5 lakh crores is what is the capital expenditure, right? So now if you see this fiscal deficit is budget deficit plus debt borrowing. So now we have seen debt borrowing. Now fiscal deficit, budget deficit will try to calculate. Budget deficit is just try to add these figures: 17 lakh crores of revenue receipts, 29 lakh crores of revenue expenditure, 17 lakh crores of capital receipts, and 5.5 lakh crores of capital expenditure. When you add it, it will come to zero. And whatever borrowing, that debt borrowing here, this borrowing would be your fiscal deficit. So this, when it comes 15 lakhs crores, if you calculate of 8 with respect to 2 lakh crore, it is going to come as 6.8% of GDP. Okay, so that is what we have calculated here. Fiscal deficit is equal to budget deficit plus debt borrowing. Okay, so this is the calculation. And when we try to calculate the primary deficit, so the primary deficit is FD, that is fiscal deficit, minus interest on the past loans. So if you see interest on the past loans, we have seen here, this is the revenue expenditure. Whatever loan central government has taken, it is 8 lakh crore. Now, if you want to calculate the primary deficit, we have to reduce fiscal deficit number, that is 15 lakh crores, minus the interest on the past loan, that is 8 lakh crore. So it comes around 7 lakh crore, which is 3.1%. Okay, so this is how we have got it. We got the numbers. Are you able to make sense out of it? Is it clear, or is it so difficult to understand? Or am I too fast or too slow? Can you just give me some feedback? Or if you have not understood anything, I'll explain it again.
Yes, sir, we can understand.
Okay, so I can go ahead, right?
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and we'll try to see. Okay, as I said, we'll just try to these are the questions sometimes come in objective exams. See, what is the percentage of the taxation? What is the ascending order, descending order? Where the rupee comes in, where the maximum portion comes in, where the maximum portion goes out. So as we have seen, see here, if you go to this diagram, you will understand. You need not even see this. So this is the maximum thing that is going out. So one sec. Yeah. So rupee comes in. So borrowing and other liabilities. So we borrow 36 paisa in 1 rupee. So borrowing and other liabilities is the major portion. Then we get GST 15%. Then income tax is 14%, corporate tax is 13%, union excise duties are 8%. So and non-tax revenue 6%. So if you go here, so if you see here, these are the receipts. This is the where in rupee comes from, right? So 17 lakh crores of receipts. So this is more. Then we have this tax revenue. This is less. In that you have income tax collection more than corporation tax, because corporation tax they have reduced, but GST have increased now. So if you see the debt receipts, that is the loans, is where we are getting more money, then from the GST, then from the income tax, and then from the corporation tax. Corporation tax used to lead income tax, but because of the we have lowest GST rates, sorry, the corporation tax rates. So now it has come little way down. So you understand this receipt sides you have to see. Then you need not even mug up these things. So loan से ज्यादा मिलता है, GST से, उसके बाद IT, income tax, corporate tax, union excise duties, and non-tax revenue. Now, where rupee goes out, so we'll see this side. So this is expenditure. Okay. So what we have: interest paid on loans, grants, subsidies, defense, salaries, pensions, and then the actual expenditures. Okay. So we'll see interest payment. So as I said, interest paid on the loans minus 8 lakh crores. Okay. So that is leading here. Where our rupee goes out is 20% of the money of government goes out in interest payment, whatever loan they have taken, maybe from RBI, from small saving funds, okay, from the market. So 20% portion goes there. Then as per the Finance Commission, they have to give 16% to the states. Then they implement so many center sector schemes. There they give 14%, and Finance Commission and other transfers are 10%. Then comes defense, then comes subsidies, then comes pension. So I've not written these their percentage. Then you can find it somewhere, and you can actually copy them. So first of all, easy to remember both. जो लोन लेते हैं वो सबसे ज्यादा है, तो जो जाएगा सबसे ज्यादा क्या, इंटरेस्ट ही जाएगा, राइट? सो इट्स नॉट difficult to remember. So loan जो receive हुआ, borrowing and other liabilities would be more, and interest payment would be more when it comes to rupee going out, right? And here you'll try to consider, because most of the indirect taxes are combined here, so GST would be more compared to any other taxes. So you understand this logic. GST would come second, okay, and the because of the corporation tax rate reduction, IT has taken the lead. So IT would be more, income tax would be more than the corporate tax. So this is easy to remember. Okay. And here again, this you need to remember, the whatever Finance Commission asks, sharing of the taxes, that is 16%. Okay. But just try to remember this. We've seen this revenue side, and we have seen the capital side also. So we've understood how we have calculated. Revenue receipts minus revenue expenditure would be your revenue deficit. Okay, in revenue deficit, if we minus this grants given, would be effective revenue deficit. Okay, then comes the debt that we have taken for capital expenditure, that is called as a fiscal deficit. So this is 15 lakhs crore of fiscal deficit. And if we consider primary deficit would be 15 minus, as you see, whatever interest on the past loan. So this is 8 lakh crores. So 15 minus 8 would be your primary deficit. That is coming 3.1%. Okay, so we'll just see the trends. So whatever we tried to do in the past, it just got failed due to this corona, and everything, this graph is on increasing side because of the things. So 9.5% was the fiscal deficit last year. They are projecting 6.8% of the fiscal deficit as we calculated here. Okay, whatever we calculated, we're putting here 6.8% of GDP is the fiscal deficit. Okay, revenue deficit is 5.1%. Effective revenue deficit is 4.1%. And if we try to calculate primary deficit, it has come down to 3.1%. So you just try to remember these 8 figures. These current 4 figures are more important, but then these figures, in order to make it complicated, they may ask these figures also. Okay, so just try to remember these somehow. Whenever you will go to exam, if you just try to write these 4 figures, 6 figures, 222, 17, 29, 17, and 5, you would be able to get all these deficit numbers as well as deficit ratios. Okay, so I think I'm trying to explain. Okay, again, this fiscal position, we have seen 34 lakhs of crore of budgetary estimates for the next year. Okay, so 34 lakh crore of expenditure. We've seen how to calculate this. No need to remember 14 lakh crore. So how are we going to uh, calculate this 14 lakhs of crore? This is the expenditure, right? So we'll go and try to calculate this. Expenditure is 29 plus 5. So 29 plus 5 comes around 34. So that is on the this is just the approximate figures. So you don't need to really mug up the thing. So 34.383 lakh crore is the expenditure. Okay, and the capital expenditure is what we have calculated. That is a 5 point. This figure you remember. This is 5.5 lakh crores. Okay, so last year's fiscal deficit was 9.5%. This year's fiscal deficit it's 6.8%. So we have seen somewhere here. Okay, that is already been taken care. Now fiscal position, इतना सारा deficit है, इतना सारा revenue deficit है, 29 lakh crore. Okay, sorry, 29 lakh crores of expenditure है, 5 lakh crores of capital expenditure. इतना सारा expenditure है, ये लोग कहाँ से लेने वाले हैं? So what they are going to do is to fiscal deficit. They are going to do it through government borrowing, multilateral borrowing, small saving funds, and short-term borrowing. So finance minister has managed to get these funds from short-term borrowing, small saving funds, multilateral borrowing, and through the government borrowing. Revenue down का reason क्या दे रहे हैं लोग? There was a reduction in the corporate tax rates. GST collection was not great, and disinvestment we could not achieve what we desired. So for the last year's revenue down, they are giving these reasons. Now FRBM mandates 3% by 31st March 2021. 3% of fiscal deficit hona hai, but as you see, it is 9.5%. But as you see, unforeseen and unprecedented circumstances due to corona pandemic. Okay, so because of that, there was a deviation, and if there is a deviation, they will always try to put it before the parliament under this section 4573B that is already laid on the table. As I said, government is going to borrow 12 lakhs of crores from the market, and that is the reason they are trying to improve the capital market ecosystem. So this is what we tried to do. And then is it too heavy? Do we need a break of 5 minutes? Probably. Then we can restart again. Okay, we'll take a break and maybe we'll reassemble by 6:15, 6-minute break. So good evening one more time. Hello. Slide is shared properly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes, sir.
yeah, the fiscal position, we have made it clear. We know where the revenue comes from. Revenue receipts, capital receipts, then revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure. Okay, we will see some more facts. So what 15 Finance Commission has to say. So they're saying ceiling of net borrowing for the states at 4% of GSD for the 2021-2022, and they will also, they can just increase it to another 0.5% depending on the some terms and conditions. So because of COVID like condition, there may be other conditions that may come in the future in which government needs to raise money, and that too quickly. Okay, they cannot just depend on the states, center to get the money. So states, their borrowing, net borrowing ceiling has been increased to 4% of their domestic product, GSDP. Okay, now at the end of the day, even if it has reached to 9.5% of GDP fiscal deficit, you have to anyways come down. So economic survey has said increasing your GDP would resolve your debt problem, because debt to GDP ratio, GDP is on the denominator side. If you try to increase the GDP, if you try to get the growth, get the GDP numbers more, you're going to control the net debt to GDP ratio, and that would not be a big problem. But for that, your GDP should and must increase, in a faster way. So now government is targeting to get their fiscal deficit to 4.5%, below 4.5% by 2025-2026. Okay, so this is what they are trying to do, from 9.5% to 4.5% in by 225 to 226. Now, how much they have calculated for the coming year? 6.8%. So by 2025, they're coming down to 4.5%. And how they are going to do it? Through increased tax revenues. How tax revenues would increase? By improving compliance. And how would compliance increase? By simplifying the laws, acts, with minimum government, maximum governance. Okay, then increase receipts from monetizing assets. As I said, they're going to do a lot of disinvestment, lot of monetizing of assets. From that, they're going to increase their tax revenue and thus reduce their fiscal deficit. They again, states also have been asked to reach to this fiscal deficit of 3% by 2023-2024. Okay, here are some facts from the 15th Finance Commission. Revenue deficit grant. They want to go away with this, actually, this concept of revenue deficit grant, and they're slowly moving to that path. But now, as per the 15th Commission, 40.1% of the vertical share of all the taxes will go to the states. Okay, by 14th Commission, it was 42%, but because J&K, became union territory, it has become 41% now. And 1.18 lakhs crores of revenue deficit grant has already been given to 17 states as per the Finance Commission's recommendation. Whatever tax central government collects, okay, some portion of that tax needs to be given to the states. That's called as a vertical share of the states. And vertical devolution and horizontal devolution is, I have 150 rupees to be given to all the states. What is the criteria among states, which one should get how much of percentage? So that is decided in horizontal devolution. So the population criteria, which is very demoralizing for the states like South Indian states and some of the states like Maharashtra and Punjab, Haryana, where they've tried to control the population. South Indian states have managed to achieve the population control targets, but because of the population criteria in the devolution of the funds, the states which are not able to manage their population, not able to control their population, they are getting more funds from the center. And states like southern states, Maharashtra, Punjab, Haryana are losing these funds. They're paying more and they're getting less. So now Finance Commission has tried to optimize this horizontal devolution. What they're saying, performance-based incentives to the states. So they don't want to discourage the states which are doing good in various areas. So they have come up with this performance-based incentive to states which are doing good in population control, health, education, gender equality, tax collection. That is both GST collection, income tax collection, everything. Then how good they are implementing the flagship schemes. How from their own budget, state's budget, how they are increasing their capital expenditure. Adoption of direct benefit transfers, how good they are doing it. How good they are promoting the digital economy. How they are promoting ease of doing business. How they are controlling the populist measures. Based on so many such criteria, central government and the Finance Commission has asked center to give performance-based incentives to the states. Okay, so this is the horizontal devolution. Now we'll see some tax proposals. Tax proposals, there are certain facts, there are certain achievements which government has given here. So the corporate tax rate among the lowest in the world after this tax cut last year. Then you have in 2020, the income tax return filers, they have almost doubled from 3.31 crores to 6.4 crores. So the compliance is increasing, is what government is trying to say. Then they have introduced faceless assessment and faceless appeal. This is already introduced. As a taxpayer, I need not see my assessment officer. I need not go visit the income tax office, and there would be no harassment, there would be no corruption there. Okay, so nobody knows who is assessing, and even officers don't know who's return they're actually trying to assess. So they have gone one step more in this budget, and what they're saying, it will be a faceless income tax appellate tribunal. This is what they're going to achieve in this year. Okay, and one more achievement is what they're saying, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. So over 1 lakh taxpayers have already opted to settle the tax disputes over, and the amount involved is 85,000 crores of rupees. Okay, so this has also helped them. This is the compliance that has increased. They have tried to reduce the rate as per the global standards. Here, they have tried to reduce the corruption, harassment of the officials, and so that more compliance people will, proactively and pay more taxes. And Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, where they don't have to go into the criticalities, but then with the proper communication, they can resolve their tax disputes. Okay, we'll see some numbers here, some proposals. So for the senior citizens, they have reduced the compliance burden. Now what they're saying, 75 years and above, they, not all the senior citizens, but the citizens having only pension and interest income, they don't have to go, they don't have to really file the returns. What then would they not pay the tax? No, they would pay the tax. They're paying bank. So pension जो बैंक उनको pay करती है या interest pay करती है, that bank will only deduct the necessary tax. So they don't have to really file the income tax. So that is what the reduction in the compliance burden. Then, as I said, faceless income tax appellate tribunal. There is no change in the income tax slabs. So whatever slabs last year they made changes, they have kept it similar. So this is a good side. They have so this is very important, because before budget, people were talking about increasing the tax for common people as well as for the extra or the ultra rich people. Okay, but something of that sort hasn't come. So government is taking care of the people should have more income, disposable income in their hand, and so that the demand, aggregate demand, would be increasing or would not reduce. Okay, again, reopening of the income tax cases, they have reduced the time limit from 6 years to 3 years. So now after 3 years, the reopening of cases and the disputes would not happen. So this is something which they have tried to improve in the income tax ecosystem. Again, this dispute resolution committee for the taxpayers with taxable income of up to 50 lakhs and disputed income up to 10 lakhs. Again, try to speed up the things. They have come up with this dispute resolution committee. And some more facts, like capital gains exemption for investment. There are so many facts, but then whatever important I could think that I have written here. For the startups, the capital gain exemption for investment has been extended till 31st March 2022. And for the affordable housing projects, the eligibility period for claiming tax has been extended to 31st of March 2022. So for the affordable housing, that is housing for all, and for this Startup India, these are the two things that they have introduced. This is just a normal, I just wanted to explain it, sales versus surcharge, how it is calculated, because sometimes you get questions from this. So what is this sales and what is this surcharge? So as you know, first of all, the sales is for every taxpayer. Okay, and surcharge is for those taxpayers who are, it's not flat, not for everyone, but for those people who are earning above certain limits. So this is the first difference. Like 50 lakhs, more than 50 lakhs, they'll have some surcharge. More than 1 crore, they'll have some rate of surcharge. Okay, now here the rate is differing for them. The calculation is, first of all, surcharge is calculated, and on that basis, the cess will be calculated. Okay. Now, suppose I have a taxable income of 10%, and there is a 4% of education and health cess, okay, and 10% of surcharge. Okay, so 10% of surcharge they will calculate first. So on 1 lakh, I will have to pay 10,000 of surcharge. Okay, and on that 4% of cess will be calculated. So on that 1 lakh of 10,000, that cess will be calculated of 4% of that 1 lakh 10,000, not the 1 lakh. Okay. Now, why it is important and why we are discussing it? Because they have introduced one cess, which is called as a agriculture infrastructure and development cess. So government, central government would always want to, introduce such cesses, because there's one advantage there. I'll just try to explain it by giving you the difference. So here, can you see this money, cess money collected will go to a separate fund. So basically, cess is calculated for particular sector and for the development and that particular sector. So currently we have education cess and health cess. So government, central government cannot spend this money on any other thing, but on whatever decided. They have to spend this money on education and health only. And here, important thing is state does not get anything out of this cess. Okay, while surcharge will go to Consolidated Fund of India and states get their share. Okay, so government will always try to introduce more cesses than surcharges. And here, as I said, for very defined objective, education and health, and this is as per the government's wish. So what is happening here in this budget? They have tried to introduce agriculture infrastructure and development cess. Okay, so which would be on multiple products. Few of them are petrol, diesel, then on select agriculture commodities, fertilizers, and precious metals. So they are going to introduce this cess on these products. So now what they have said here, this burden on increase of cess would not be on consumer, because what they have done here on petrol and diesel, they have introduced this cess 2.5 liters, 5 per liter and 4 rupees per liter on diesel. But what they have done here, basic custom duty reduced here. So custom duty, whatever they were going to get from the petrol and diesel, they have reduced it and they have introduced this cess, so that because this custom duty collection money would be going to Consolidated Fund of India, and states also get uh, the portion of it for their consumption. But here they have reduced the state's income and they have increased the center's income here. So this is for this only reason I wanted to explain you the difference between cess and surcharge. Again, we are paying 4% of education health cess. So education 3% and health is 1% cess on all direct taxes. 10% of social welfare surcharge, 5% of the health cess on import of medical devices. These are the three cesses currently, cess and surcharge, we are actually paying. Okay. Now we'll just see center sector schemes. This probably would be the last slide. So just wanted to give you some sort of information. Center sector schemes. What are these schemes? These are funded 100% by the central government. Okay, so like urea subsidy, PM Kisan Yojana, something like this. So these are center sector scheme, and how much they are going to give in this budget is 11 lakh crores. So sometimes you get a question, how much is the percentage of money that is going out of GDP to the center sector scheme? So 11 lakh crore is going out of 222 lakh crore. So that percentage can be found out easily. Again, central sponsored schemes. These are jointly funded by the center states. We always, whenever we go for these various schemes, we always find difficulty in coming up with the percentage of center and state percentage. 75%, 25%, 80%, 20%, 90%, 10%. So these are the centrally sponsored scheme, and for them, budget is giving 4 lakhs of crore rupees to these schemes. So even among the centrally sponsored scheme, we have two types of scheme: core of the core schemes and core schemes. In the core of core scheme, these 6 schemes, we just try to get the exact figures. Whatever I could find, these are 29 schemes. They're just trying to club the different schemes and making it more comprehensive. So core of the core schemes, and Manrega and umbrella schemes for SCs, STs, minorities, and vulnerable group. So these are the core, core of the core schemes. For them, it is giving 1 lakh crore. And for core schemes like Amrut, Fasal Bima, Smart Cities, they are giving 3 lakhs crore. So 1 lakh crore for core of the core scheme, 3 lakh crore to the core schemes, total 4 lakh crores. And for center sector schemes, they are giving 11 lakh crores. Okay, so whenever whatever percentage of GDP you need to calculate, you can just calculate 4 lakh crores out of 222 lakh crores. So this is probably from my side. I think I could explain you so many things. Many things can be read from the actual budget, but don't try to mug up the numbers and the facts. Just try to focus on the policy level changes, the vision, and how the reforms are being carried out in the budget. Because budget, at the end of the day, whatever government says, if they are not going to give in the budget the finances, then everything would be useless. So in the first slide, if I said, yeah, so the last point, whenever you're writing any answer to in the mains exam or giving any interview answers, this is very important. How much government is paying or how much government is allocating, at the end of the day, the effective implementation of the proposed budget will be a key always. Okay, so that is from my side. Thank you so much for your time, and I think I have tried to cover it. If I have missed anything, just do let me know so that I can tell you about it, and I'll share this PPT with you after this session ends. Thank you so much.